Introduction. The paper was thick, creamy, and carried the heavy seal of the Royal College of Physicians. In March 1902, a man named Dr. George still sat at his desk in London, looking over his notes for a series of lectures that would change the way the world looked at children forever. He dipped his pen in ink and wrote about a group of children who seemed different. These children were bright. They were often full of life and quick with a joke. But they had a problem that no one could quite explain. Dr. Still wrote that these children had an abnormal defect of moral control. He described boys who couldn't sit still, who acted without thinking, and who seemed to lack the brakes that other children used to stop themselves from doing something risky. Back then, the medical world didn't have a name for ADHD. They didn't have brain scans or dopamine studies. Doctors still just saw children who were often punished, often shamed, and often labeled as bad or lazy by their teachers and parents. He noticed that even when these boys were smart, they couldn't seem to follow the rules of the world around them. For over 100 years, that idea of moral failing stuck. It suggested that if a boy couldn't focus or keep his hands to himself, it was because he was a bad kid or because his parents weren't being strict enough. It turned homes into battlefields and parents into police officers. The glass on the kitchen floor. In a bright kitchen in Chicago, 120 years after those lectures in London, Sarah Miller stood frozen. The sound of the shattering glass was still ringing in her ears. On the floor, a heavy sneaker lay in the middle of a pile of shards that used to be the door of her favorite china cabinet. Her 9-year-old son, Leo, was standing by the island. His face was a mixture of shock and hot, bubbling anger. He hadn't meant to break the cabinet. He had been looking for his iPad for 20 minutes, getting more and more frustrated with every drawer he opened. When he couldn't find it, the feeling inside him became too big to hold. He had picked up his shoe and thrown it, not at the cabinet but just away. "I hate this house," Leo screamed. He didn't wait for Sarah to answer. He turned and ran up the stairs, his feet thudding against the wood like a drumbeat. A moment later, his bedroom door slammed so hard the pictures on the hallway wall rattled. Sarah didn't move. She didn't yell. She didn't even start cleaning up the glass. She just felt a deep, heavy coldness in her chest. She looked down at the kitchen island, where a framed photo of Leo sat. In the picture, he was 3 years old, covered in chocolate cake frosting, laughing at the camera. She missed that boy. The Leo she lived with now felt like a stranger. Every morning was a fight over socks that felt too scratchy. Every afternoon was a war over math homework that ended in tears. Every evening was a struggle to get him into the shower. Sarah felt like she was spending her whole life correcting him, reminding him and punishing him. She was a senior marketing manager. She was used to fixing problems and hitting goals. But at home, she felt like a total failure. She had tried the sticker charts. She had tried taking away his video games. She had tried timeouts and time-ins. Nothing worked. She felt like the connection cord between her and her son was fraying, strand by strand, until it was about to snap. The hidden reality of the ADHD brain. If you are reading this, you probably know exactly how Sarah feels. You know the look other parents give you at the park when your son is too loud or too rough. You know the sinking feeling in your stomach when the school's phone number pops up on your caller ID. You know the exhaustion that comes from being on high alert every single second of the day. The truth is that you are not a bad parent. Your son is not a bad kid. What Dr. George still didn't know in 1902, but what we know now, is that a boy with ADHD isn't choosing to be difficult. He isn't trying to make your life hard. He is navigating the world with a brain that is wired differently. Think of it this way: your son has a Ferrari engine for a brain. It is powerful, fast, and capable of amazing things. But he was born with bicycle brakes. When he sees something interesting, his engine roars to life. He zooms forward at 100 miles an hour. But when he needs to stop, to listen to a direction, to stay in his seat, or to control his temper, those tiny bicycle brakes just can't handle the speed. He crashes. And usually, you are the one who has to pick up the pieces. This book is about how to stop being the police officer and start being the coach. It is about moving away from the cycle of shouting and toward a relationship built on trust. A new way to see your son. The goal of our journey together is a total transformation of your home. Right now, your days might feel like a series of fires you are trying to put out. You are tired of the chaos. You are tired of feeling guilty. You want to see your son flourish, but you are stuck in the survival mode of daily life. By the time you finish this book, you will see things differently. You will move from being a reactive parent to a proactive one. You will understand the why behind the meltdowns. Instead of seeing a tantrum, you will see a brain that is temporarily offline. Instead of seeing laziness, you will see a struggle with executive function. This isn't just about managing behaviors. It is about building a bond that is strong enough to survive the hard days. We are going to look at how to use effective communication that doesn't end in a shouting match. Set up practical systems in your home that work with his brain instead of against it. Help him find social success so he can build real friendships. Protect his self-esteem in a world that often tells him he isn't doing it right. We will look at the lives of people who changed the history of the world because of their ADHD, not in spite of it. We will see how a young Winston Churchill was labeled a troublesome boy who couldn't focus, yet he grew up to save his nation. We will see how Michael Phelps used the structure his mother provided to turn his high energy into Olympic gold. Why this works. The strategies in these chapters aren't based on perfect children who always listen. They are based on real science and real life. We will use the strength-based approach pioneered by experts like Dr. Ned Hallowell. This approach teaches us that ADHD is a collection of traits that can be either a burden or a gift, depending on how they are managed. If we only focus on the disorder, we spend all our time trying to fix what is broken. But if we focus on the person, we can help our sons harness their creativity, their energy, and their unique way of seeing the world. Sarah Miller's story didn't end with the broken glass on the kitchen floor. It was actually the beginning of her realization that the old way of parenting wasn't going to save her relationship with Leo. She had to learn a new language. She had to learn how to be the air traffic controller for his busy mind. As we move through these chapters, we will follow Sarah and Leo. We will see them have wins and setbacks. We will see Sarah learn how to handle the school phone calls and the morning routine. Most importantly, we will see her find that little boy in the chocolate-covered photo again. The path ahead. The journey from chaos to closeness isn't a straight line. There will be days when the bicycle brakes fail again. There will be days when you feel like you've taken 2 steps back. That is okay. This book is organized to give you help exactly where you need it most. In the beginning, we will look at the biology of his brain. We will explore why he can focus on a video game for 3 hours, but can't remember to put his shoes on. We will talk about dopamine, the fuel that his brain is constantly hunting for. Then, we will move into the environment. We will look at how to turn your home into a place that supports him. We will cover the 3 pillars of a home that reduces stress for everyone. Later, we will dive into the strategies. How do you handle a meltdown in the middle of a grocery store? How do you stop the homework wars? How do you help him make a friend? We will give you a toolkit of techniques that you can start using today. Finally, we will look at the long game. We will talk about what happens when he becomes a teenager and then a man. We will focus on building his resilience so he can rise after every failure. You were chosen to be this boy's parent for a reason. You have the heart and the strength to help him flourish. You just need a better map. The sneaker is on the floor. The glass is broken. The door has slammed. But the story isn't over. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The ADHD Brain, a Ferrari engine with bicycle brakes. If you walk through the tall wooden doors of Harrow School in England today, you will see a building that feels like a museum. The floors are polished to a high shine. The air smells like old books and expensive wax. On the walls there are lists of names carved into the wood. These are the names of the boys who became leaders, poets, and heroes. It is a place of perfect order, where every tie is straight and every student knows exactly where to stand. But in 1888, this same school felt like a prison to a young boy named Winston. At 13 years old, Winston Churchill did not fit the Harrow mold. While the other boys sat quietly in their hard wooden chairs, Winston was a blur of motion. While they memorized Latin verbs, Winston's mind was miles away, imagining grand battles or thinking about his collection of lead soldiers at home. He was not a quiet child. He was loud, he was messy, and he was constantly in trouble. To his teachers, he was a puzzle they couldn't solve. To his father, he was a disappointment. Lord Randolph Churchill was a very important man in the government, and he had no patience for a son who couldn't seem to get his act together. He looked at Winston's school reports and saw a boy who was lazy and forgetful. In one of his many letters home, Winston's teachers wrote that he was a constant source of trouble to everyone. He was at the very bottom of his class. He couldn't focus on his lessons, he lost his books, and he seemed to have a defect of character. His father eventually wrote him a letter that would break any child's heart. He told Winston that if he didn't change, he would become a social failure and lead a useless, unhappy, and neglected life. Lord Randolph thought his son's brain was broken. He thought Winston just didn't care enough to try. But Winston wasn't lazy. He wasn't stupid. In fact, his brain was working harder than almost anyone else's in that room. The problem wasn't a lack of power, it was a lack of control. Winston was a boy with a massive, high-powered engine, trapped in a world that only valued slow, steady walking. The race car in the classroom. Many years later, a man named Dr. Ned Hallowell sat in a doctor's office and thought about his own childhood. Like Winston, Ned had grown up feeling like he was always a step behind or 10 steps too fast. He had a hard time sitting still. He had a hard time following directions. When he finally learned about ADHD, it was like someone had turned on a light in a dark room. Ned didn't like the way people talked about ADHD. They called it a disorder. They talked about it like it was a disease or a broken part. But Ned knew that wasn't the whole story. He knew that having ADHD felt like having a lot of energy and creativity that just didn't have a place to go. He came up with a way to explain it that changed everything for parents and kids. He said that having ADHD is like having a Ferrari engine for a brain, but with bicycle brakes. Think about that for a second. A Ferrari is one of the fastest, most powerful cars in the world. It is built for speed. It is built for excitement. If you put a Ferrari on an open racetrack, it is a masterpiece. It can do things a normal car could never dream of. It can accelerate in a heartbeat and fly down the road. But what happens if you put that Ferrari engine into a car that only has the brakes from a mountain bike? If you try to drive that car through a busy city with lots of stoplights, you're going to have a hard time. You'll want to go fast because that's what the engine is made to do. But when the light turns red, those tiny bicycle brakes won't be able to stop all that power in time. You'll overshoot the line. You'll bump into the car in front of you. You'll feel frustrated because you know you're supposed to stop, but the equipment you're using just isn't strong enough to hold back the engine. This is exactly what is happening inside your son's head. When your son is running through the house after you've told him to sit down, that's the Ferrari engine. When he interrupts you for the 5th time while you're on the phone, that's the engine. When he gets so excited about a Lego set that he forgets to eat or use the bathroom, that's the engine. He isn't trying to be bad. He isn't trying to ignore you. His engine is just revving at 10,000 rounds per minute, and his little bicycle brakes are smoking and squealing as he tries to slow down. The tragedy for boys like Winston Churchill, and boys like your son, is that the world usually spends all its time yelling at the engine instead of helping the driver strengthen the brakes. The science of the squeaky brakes. To understand why your son's brakes are so small, we have to look under the hood. For a long time, people thought ADHD was just about behavior. They thought it was a choice. But we now know it is about neurobiology. That's a big word that just means the way the brain is wired. Deep inside the human brain, there are chemical messengers called dopamine. Think of dopamine like the fuel that helps the brain's air traffic control tower do its job. This control tower is located right behind the forehead, in a place called the prefrontal cortex. This is the part of the brain that handles the brakes. It helps us wait our turn, plan for the future, ignore distractions, control our emotions. In a typical brain, the dopamine levels stay pretty steady. The control tower has enough fuel to stay awake and keep the planes, your thoughts and actions, moving in an orderly way. But in a boy with ADHD, the brain is hungry for dopamine. It doesn't have enough of it, or it uses it up too fast. When the brain is low on this fuel, the control tower starts to get sleepy. It stops paying attention. The planes start flying wherever they want. This is why your son might be able to play a video game for 3 hours, but can't focus on a math worksheet for 3 minutes. The video game is a giant dopamine factory. It's loud, fast, and gives constant rewards. It provides the fuel the brain is starving for. The math worksheet, on the other hand, is like a dry desert. There is no dopamine there. So the brain's control tower shuts down, the engine takes over, and your son starts looking for something, anything, that will give him that spark of interest. When you see him misbehaving, what you are often seeing is a dopamine hunt. He is trying to wake his brain up. He might start a fight, jump off the couch, or make a loud noise just to get a reaction. To the engine, a negative reaction is still a spark. It's still fuel. The view from Sarah's kitchen. In a quiet suburb of Chicago, Sarah Miller sat at her kitchen island, staring at a crumpled piece of paper. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the house was finally quiet because her son Leo was in his room for a timeout. The paper was a note from Leo's teacher. It said that Leo had spent the afternoon disrupting the class by making humming noises and tapping his pencil. It said he hadn't finished his writing assignment because he was too busy looking out the window. Sarah felt a familiar weight in her chest. It was a mix of guilt and exhaustion. She looked at the photo on the fridge of Leo when he was 4. He was wearing a superhero cape and had a grin that could light up a stadium. He was so bright, so funny, and so full of life. But lately, she felt like she was losing that boy. Every day felt like a battle. She felt like a police officer instead of a mother. Put your shoes on. Stop hitting your sister. Sit in your chair. Why aren't you listening? She had tried everything. She had made a sticker chart with gold stars for good behavior. She had taken away his iPad. She had tried timeouts and time-ins. But nothing seemed to work. Leo would promise to be better, and she could tell he really meant it. He would look at her with big teary eyes and say, "I'm sorry, Mommy. I'll try harder." But 10 minutes later, he would be jumping off the back of the sofa again. Sarah started to think she was a failure. She looked at other moms at school who seemed to have children that just obeyed. Their kids sat on the bench and waited for their turn. Their kids didn't lose their jackets every single week. Sarah wondered what she was doing wrong. Was she too soft? Was she too mean? Why was her son so difficult? As she sat there, she realized she was doing exactly what Winston Churchill's father had done. She was looking at the bicycle brakes, the failure to sit still and finish the work, and she was deciding that the whole car was a wreck. She was so focused on the humming and the tapping and the lost jackets that she was forgetting about the Ferrari engine. She was forgetting that Leo could build a 1,000-piece Lego set without looking at the instructions. She was forgetting that he was the first person to notice if his little sister was sad. She was forgetting that his restless mind was actually a mind that noticed everything: the way the light hit the trees, the sound of a bird outside, the way a machine worked. The labels, troublesome, distracted, disruptive, were starting to cover up the boy she loved. Sarah realized she didn't need a better punishment. She needed a better map of her son's brain. The gift of the Ferrari. If you have a son with ADHD, you probably feel like Sarah more often than you'd like to admit. You are exhausted by the noise and the constant no. But here is the truth that Winston Churchill eventually proved to the world: the Ferrari engine is not a mistake. Winston's defects were actually his greatest strengths, they were just being used in the wrong place. His impulsivity? Later in life, it became the ability to make quick, bold decisions when his country was under attack. His troublesome refusal to follow the rules? It became the stubbornness that allowed him to stand up to a dictator when everyone else wanted to give up. His distracted mind? It was actually a mind that could see the big picture, thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone else. If Winston had been a good boy, who sat quietly and did exactly what he was told, he might never have become the man who saved England. He needed that high-powered engine to do the work he was born to do. He just had to grow up enough for his brakes to catch up to his motor. The same is true for your son. The traits that make him difficult today are often the same traits that will make him a great man tomorrow. A boy who is bossy on the playground often has the engine of a CEO. A boy who can't stop talking often has the engine of a great salesman or a teacher. A boy who daydreams during math often has the engine of an artist or an inventor. Your job as a parent isn't to downgrade the engine. You don't want to turn his Ferrari into a minivan. The world has enough minivans. The world needs Ferraris. They are the ones who solve the big problems and create the beautiful things. Your job is to be his brake mechanic. You are there to help him understand how his car works. You are there to help him learn when to rev the engine and when to pump the brakes. You are there to make sure he doesn't crash while he's still learning to drive. This starts with a change in the way you see him. When he does something that frustrates you, I want you to stop and ask yourself, is this a brake problem or an engine problem? If he's yelling because he's excited, engine. If he forgot his homework for the third time, brakes. If he's making a hilarious joke at the wrong time, engine. If he can't stop playing a game when you say time's up, brakes. When you see it this way, the anger starts to melt away. You don't get mad at a car because its brakes are squeaking, you take it to the shop. You don't get mad at a boy because his brain hasn't finished growing its control center, you help him build systems to stay safe. Strengthening the connection. The most important tool in your mechanic's kit isn't a chart, a pill, or a punishment. It is connection. When Winston Churchill was at his lowest point in school, he felt like he was all alone. He felt like his father was his enemy. That feeling of being bad or broken is the most dangerous thing for a boy with ADHD. When a boy feels like he can never win, he eventually stops trying. He decides that if he's going to be the bad kid, he might as well be the best at being bad. But when a boy knows that his parents are on his team, that they see his Ferrari engine and they love it, everything changes. In the chapters to come, we are going to look at many ways to help your son thrive. We will talk about routines, school, and how to handle meltdowns. But all of those things are like the tires on the car. They are important, but they won't go anywhere if the car isn't hooked up to a power source. That power source is your relationship. Think of it as a connection cord. When that cord is plugged in, your son feels safe. He feels seen. He feels like he has a home base to return to when the world gets too loud or too fast. When the cord is unplugged, he feels like he's spinning out of control. Sarah Miller realized this as she watched Leo come out of his room after his timeout. His shoulders were slumped. He looked defeated. Usually, she would start a lecture. She would say, "Do you understand why you were in there? Do you know why the teacher sent that note?" But this time, she did something different. She knelt down so she was at his eye level. She didn't look at the note on the counter. She looked at him. "Leo," she said quietly, "I know it was a hard day. I know your brain felt like it was going very fast today, and it was hard to slow it down." Leo looked up, surprised. He didn't see an angry police officer. He saw his mom. My brain was very loud today, he whispered. I know, Sarah said, pulling him into a hug. You have a very big, powerful brain. It's like a race car. Sometimes we just need to work on the brakes together. Want to go outside and see how fast you can actually run? Leo's face transformed. The bad kid vanished, and the superhero cape boy was back. He didn't need a lecture. He needed to know that his mom saw the Ferrari, not just the smoke from the brakes. The challenge. As we begin this journey together, I want to give you a challenge. It is easy to see the things that are going wrong. It is easy to count the bicycle brake failures. But today, I want you to look for the engine. Take a piece of paper, or open a note on your phone. Write down 3 things your son did today that showed the power of his brain. Did he show incredible curiosity? Did he make you laugh with a clever observation? Did he show a massive amount of energy while playing? Did he notice a tiny detail that everyone else missed? When you find yourself wanting to shout or feel that weight of failure in your chest, look at that list. Remind yourself that you are raising a boy who has the potential to change the world, just like Winston. He just needs a mechanic who believes in the machine. Are you ready to stop being the police officer and start being the coach? Take a deep breath. The road ahead might be fast and a little bit bumpy, but you have the best car in the world for the trip. Now let's go find that connection and start building those brakes. What is one Ferrari trait you saw in your son today that you usually mistake for a problem? Chapter 2. Why does my son only focus on what he loves? The teacher's voice snapped through the air like a wet towel. She was tired of the tapping, the humming, and the way Michael's eyes constantly drifted toward the window. He was 11 years old, a lanky kid with ears that seemed a bit too big for his head and arms that never seemed to stop moving. In that 6th grade classroom in Towson, Maryland, Michael was a problem to be solved. He wasn't mean, and he wasn't trying to be difficult, but he simply could not stay in his seat. He couldn't keep his mind on the math problems on the chalkboard. To his teacher, Michael looked like a boy who wasn't trying. She saw a child who lacked the willpower to do what every other student was doing. One afternoon, the frustration boiled over. The teacher sat down with Michael's mother, Debbie. She didn't offer a plan or a suggestion for help. Instead, she delivered a verdict. She looked at Debbie in the eye and told her that Michael would never be able to focus on anything. In her mind, the boy was broken. His brain was like a radio stuck between stations, catching only static and brief bursts of noise. She saw his future as a series of half-finished tasks and failed attempts at life. She saw a boy who lacked the one thing a person needs to succeed, the ability to pay attention. Debbie Phelps didn't buy it. She knew something the teacher didn't. She had seen her son at the local pool. When Michael hit the water, the static disappeared. The boy who couldn't sit still for 5 minutes in a hard plastic chair could spend 4 hours following a black line at the bottom of a swimming pool. He didn't just swim, he became the water. He noticed every tiny detail of his stroke. He knew exactly how many breaths he took per lap. He was so locked in that the rest of the world, the shouting coaches, the splashing kids, the smell of chlorine, simply vanished. This was the great mystery of Michael Phelps. How could a boy who couldn't focus become the most focused person in the world the moment he put on a pair of goggles? The answer to that question is the key to understanding your son. It's the secret that turns the chaos of ADHD into a path toward greatness. The myth of the empty tank. Most people think attention is like a gas tank. They think a boy with ADHD has an empty tank. They believe he just doesn't have enough attention juice to get through the day. Because the tank is empty, he can't finish his homework, he can't listen to instructions, and he can't remember to put his shoes away. This is the biggest myth in the world of neurodiversity. Your son does not have a deficit of attention. He actually has an abundance of it. His tank isn't empty, it's overflowing. The problem isn't that he can't focus. It's that he has very little control over what he focuses on. His brain is a high-powered searchlight in a dark room. Most people can pick up the searchlight.